Hello, my name is Miriam, and I'm sitting here with Neely. And our topic, podcast topic today is called Making Aliyah, means immigration to Israel with the wrong expectations. So many people come here, many people make Aliyah to Israel. As you know, Nefesh B'Nefesh, Jewish Agency, whatever. Most of you know, you're very familiar with Nefesh B'Nefesh. And you come here, or you're planning to come here, you're preparing to come here, you listen to all these Nefesh B'Nefesh lectures they give you, and they mostly say, like, everything is great in Israel. Everything is so great, and it's the land of milk and honey. It is, but in another way, it is not. And in the past, I saw many people coming, and they were so enthusiastic and everything, a Zionist, and they wanted to make it a new life, a better life, a great life, a Jewish life. And after a while, it just didn't work out. Expectations weren't met for whatever reason, and people went back to the United States, to England, or wherever they came from. So today, with my friend Neely, we're going to discuss a little about expectations, what people have when they make Aliyah, what kind of expectations. Of course, everybody has something else, some other issues, and why or when it can work out, and why people go back. So maybe, Neely, you want to start and maybe say what kind of expectations you had, what expectations were met, and what you really find very upsetting. Yeah.
I didn't have great expectations, but I had talked to many people who had come from Israel. And I also, years ago, I had read a very good book that was very straightforward and sort of said, if you think things are going to be like this, you're in for a big surprise. So I kind of had not too many big expectations. When I got here, I had already arranged for a job, so I didn't have to worry about work. And I had also had savings so that even if my job didn't pan through, I could survive for a certain amount of time. And I think the worst thing that people do, they come here, they have no money, they have no job, they don't know where they're going to live, and they expect that as soon as they get off the airport, they're going to say, oh, you've made Aliyah, we're welcome, we'll pay everything. Not going to happen. Unless you come from a third world country where you're starving and living in a mud hut, you're going to find it very difficult here.
When I made Aliyah in June 2000, I did not have any expectations. I knew how life in Israel works. Because I had lived here 2.5 years before that, I had lived here for almost 3 years. So meaning I learned the language, I learned Hebrew, and I had a job. I studied in yeshiva, and I dealt with Israeli mentality. As soon as you know Hebrew, you have to know Hebrew in order to get to know people, get to know the mentality, let alone looking for a job and everything. Hebrew always helps. Of course, you can get along in English, but it makes it a little harder. And people don't tell you everything. For instance, when you open a bank account, so they just tell you the basics. If you spoke Hebrew, so people would give you all the details. But many people here in Israel, their English is limited. So they say whatever they think or whatever their vocabulary is, but it doesn't help you with all getting the information. So when I made Aliyah, after I had lived here before, so I went back to Europe, and then I came here on Aliyah with the Jewish Agency. I knew the language, I knew mentality, I knew Jerusalem, I knew how to find a job, how to look for an apartment, I knew all this. And within 2 weeks, I had everything. So it makes it, because I knew everything, and I knew, you can't expect too much. You have to face reality. You may get off the Nefesh B'Nefesh plane, and everybody like is shouting and welcome and celebrating and yeah. But a day or 2 days later, you're going to face Israeli life. And Israeli life is not always so pleasant as you may expect it. It's very realistic. Israelis have an entirely different mentality. And I think you're in the States. I've never been to the United States, but let's take the United States as an example. You are, how can I say, you are used to a certain kind of politeness, service, getting a service.
No, not in Israel.
No, not in Israel. No, I'm saying in the United States, they are used. And then you come here and, your services, you're phoning somewhere, the electric company or something, and you are having a problem, and people just hang up on you. People just hang up for whatever reason. Actually, I do the same. You get used to it after a while. But people just hang up on you. They don't want to talk to you. They just hang up on you, and you say, hello, hello, no one there. And it's a very different kind of lifestyle. I'm not talking about the costs of living,
which are very high.
I think New York also has.
I think we're higher than New York. The big thing that people don't realize in Israel is that the wages are so low. Even now, after all these years that I've worked here, and I was working at what's considered a decent paying job, I was only making a quarter of what I made 20 years ago before I made Aliyah.
In Canada.
Yeah. So it's a big deal. And if you want to buy a house here, well, you better have a whole lot of money, because it's not like, say, in Canada where you can go and put down 25% and get a mortgage. They don't do that here. You have to have almost half down in some cases. And if you're not young, they won't give you a mortgage at all. They'll just give you a loan for a couple 100,000 shekels. And you're not going to buy anything for under 1.5 million shekels. And what you get for 1.5 million shekels is not much either.
In Jerusalem, for a 3-room apartment, you pay 2 million shekels, minimum. Which is in dollars, I don't know how many dollars.
Minimum. You divide it by 2.5.
Ah, okay. I think the financial aspect is very important.
Yeah.
Of course, you get, let's say you come with Nefesh B'Nefesh, and as far as I know, today Nefesh B'Nefesh works like you can't be poor when signing up there.
I'm not sure they ask for all your finances. I myself chose not to go with Nefesh B'Nefesh because I was actually here, because I wanted to come and live here for a while before I made Aliyah. So I was actually here, and I just went through the Jewish agency. And even the Jewish agency, you get the same thing. They call it an Aliyah basket, and it's spread over, I think, the first year. But it only comes to around 14,000 shekels. And if you're living in Israel, 14,000 shekels is nothing.
Oh.
It may pay for your electricity for a year, but that's about it. You don't get all these free handouts. They give you where you can get some discount on appliances in the first few years, little things like that. But if you don't have money in the first place, you can't make use of those things. And also, the housing, the apartments here are not even, most of them are not even real apartments. I'm not just talking like slightly small. I'm talking like you're living in a one-room box that you can barely turn around in. And that's what most people can afford. If you want to have something where you have 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms, you better have some money. And I find too many people are coming here. They don't have anything. They come here with $100.
Even from Europe now, even from Western European countries, they come here. They have nothing.
Here, they have
and they are on welfare.
Yeah.
They're on welfare. They're collecting welfare.
And complaining because the welfare here is very low. And also, the pensions here are very low. Even if you've paid in for a number of years, you're not going to have enough pension to support yourself unless you're living in a little hovel someplace.
Well, this is why many Israelis who are on pension, they still have to work.
Yeah.
They are still looking for a job. Like here, I have this supermarket super deal nearby in my neighborhood, and there was, now he's not working anymore, but there was a 70-year-old guy, and he was working at the till for the past 2 or 3 years until he got cancer and couldn't work anymore. Now this corona stuff and everything. So he probably had to stop because of that. But you see many elderly people who are actually collecting pension, but they still have to work. They work as security guards in front of malls, or they clean malls with this, with this cleaning machine and everything. They have all kinds of jobs. So many people cannot rely on their pension, even if you paid in, even if you sign up for a private pension insurance. It doesn't, you can never be sure how much you get. And rent here is pretty high. I'm not saying it's like New York.
It's very high.
It's compared to the income of people, it's very high. And also cost of living, like groceries are very expensive. I don't know how it is in your place. Maybe you can leave some comments or something about where you live and
the other thing
your amounts.
The other thing that people don't realize here in Israel is most people, if you live in an apartment building, you have to pay for cleaning the building. Here we call it VOD. So you're always paying that, which is not so surprising. But
it's also when you have like an elevator in the building, or when you have a garden around.
Yeah, it can be very expensive. And some places, the newer places, you have to pay for a gardener for your little garden apartment. But the other thing that we have to pay for here, they call it our arnona, and that's like property tax. So the renters pay everything. And now most apartments, especially if they're, say, fairly new, the owner wants you to pay the building apartment insurance so that if there's damage, he gets the money. You pay the insurance, the landlord gets the money. These are the types of things that you're faced with. And people who aren't prepared for this, they'll go into shock, and you think you might have a job and say, oh, I can live on this, and then you find out you're not going to make it. That's one of the financial is a big thing. A lot of people that I know, they couldn't take the financial, and many people could not take the stress of living in lesser housing than they were used to.
Yeah.
They're living in Canada, you have a house and a lot and your car, sometimes 2 cars, and you'll come here and you're living in 2 rooms in the middle of stolen
unless you
brick,
have a lot of money.
and you're taking the bus. Most people take the bus who used to drive all the time, because
Car insurance
cars,
is very expensive.
when you buy a car, you're paying almost 100% tax on it. So you don't dare buy a new car, and the yearly maintenance and insurance is through the roof. And anything you have done to a car here is so outrageously priced. It's not like you can go to a place and buy a spare part and put it in yourself if you know how to tinker. Not in this country. It's the same with computers. If you are used to repairing your own computer and buying a new DVD drive and popping it inside, you can't do that here because they won't sell it to you.
Well, we have one guy here in Jerusalem. I'm going to make some advertising now. Hello, it's advertising time now. We have someone in Jerusalem here. He's American. He has fair prices and he's very honest. I'm not just saying it, I mean it. And he's called the PC guy. His name is Paul. And you can find him also on Facebook under the name PC guy. So
yeah,
get him and you have American standard.
Yeah, but you have to, once again, you have to go through him. If you're used to doing your own tinkering around and fixing up, it's very difficult here, unless you're somebody like this guy who's doing it as a profession and has the contacts.
Yeah. I think another issue, it's not only the financial issue, a very important issue is Israeli mentality. Even if you don't speak Hebrew, you have to get to a very different kind of mentality. Call it Middle East mentality, call it whatever you like. Israelis are very different from, let's say, America. And many I've met many Americans, many British, or especially many Americans who could not get used to this kind of mentality. They just found it disgusting and rude and I don't know what, and they couldn't deal with it. And they also went back to the United States. What do you say about mentality?
Well, I got used to it. I can say that there are days that I get very aggravated and I just want to slap somebody, but I don't expect anything different. I know that's what the mentality, it's a way of thinking. You're living in a different culture.
Maybe you can explain the mentality. You have the mindset, the North American mindset.
It's a thing like, as for one thing, if you're a woman and you're walking down the street, you're not going to see anybody lend you a hand or stand aside. They'll knock you to the ground to get on the bus first and get the seat.
Well, it depends. It can happen. Not
Even
everybody.
with the cast on my arm, I had people pushing me aside so they could get the seat ahead of me. And you expect this. There are many people who are like that. At the same time, you will find people who have some form of manners. It just depends on where you are, but you can't expect it to be, even like for the police, there's police everywhere. You don't have to be afraid so much that anybody's going to mug you because, one, it's too secure. But on the other hand, if you go to the police and say that somebody shoved you out, they'll just tell you to get lost. Because they have more important things to deal with. And there's things like the security checks people aren't used to. Took me a little bit to get used to having people. I used to go on a bus to work and I would carry sometimes a change of clothes because it was hot and I would sometimes have a swim before I come home. And then I'd stop on the way home in the store and you have to get used to somebody reaching inside your bag and rifling through your underwear and checking to see there's nothing hidden inside. If you're not used to that, it can seem intrusive. Once you get used to it, though, you don't even think twice about it. It's just par for the course.
I think it's also very hard for new immigrants when they come here and their Hebrew is either non-existent or limited.
It is. You have to have
and
a
you have to
minimal.
go to the bank and you have to go to deal with insurance companies. You have to deal with, I don't know what, the municipality. And I would say like more than 90% of websites or information, written information, are in Hebrew.
You need basic, like my online banking is all in Hebrew. You can get an English page, but you can't do the same things and it doesn't work as well. So you have to learn how to maneuver your bank transfers and everything in Hebrew. And it's also different if you want to send money to another country, if you want, everything is slightly in a little bit different way. You have to get used to everything is from right to left and not left to right. So, you have to look at everything from the numbers to letters to signs. Everything is different than what you're used to. And many people will help if you ask for help, but many people just don't care. When you're new, they'll say, oh, welcome. But then after you've been here a week or two, you just have to get on with it because people don't have time. It's the nature of the country. Everybody's kind of in a hurry. They have things to do.
Well, they have to pay bills. Bills are very high. People work. People have to pay bills. People are running, taking care of the kids. Now it's Corona time.
And there's also the stress that we have to deal with, possible terror attacks and things like that. And that's always in the back of people's mind. You always have to be alert for things like that. It's not as clean as most countries that you'll be coming from. People don't have the same cleanliness ideas. If you go to the open air shooks, the markets, I can't tell you how many times I've stood there and who is new to the country because they're watching how the food is being handled and they're getting sick. And you have to get used to that because that's the way of life over here. You can go into a supermarket where everything is bagged up, but you're still going to pay a fortune. And there's many different things. It's a learning process. It's a learning process. We're in the Middle East. We're not a third world country, but we're living in the middle of the third world. And many of the people in this country are still carrying a third world mentality. And so if you're not used to that, and it's also, um, it's a patriarch society. In other words, it's a male society.
It is.
There's many places where,
Especially in the army and the police.
sometimes even on buses.
It's also in the high-tech field.
Everything, yeah. It's a very male-dominated society, and women certainly can hold their own, but there's just places that women don't go into, and the men won't let you in.
Well, I met some female engineers. They studied
Yeah.
engineering and all kinds of, and they told me, in my class, I'm the only girl, or maybe there are two more girls, and 50 people are male.
Yeah. And the synagogues are pretty much, they're segregated, that you have either the females upstairs and the men downstairs, or a curtain down the middle separating them. Even at religious weddings, it's like that. There's a dividing line. If you're Jewish and you're Orthodox, it doesn't bother you because you're used to it. But if you're just coming here and you haven't had any experience with the real Orthodox community, you'll be surprised.
Yep. I don't know. It's I can give you the advice in order when you make Aliyah and in order to deal with everything. Sometimes you really feel like, especially at the beginning, you're so upset. Sometimes you feel like crying when someone is just coming up to you and yelling at you for no reason. And you think like, you know what? I don't need this. Everybody can, so to speak, F off, leave me alone. And I'm going back to the United States. I'm going back. I don't need this. I used to have in the States, I used to have my good job, a nice apartment, nice people around me, a nice environment. And now people are coming here and yelling at me for no reason. But you know what? You have to give it some time. You shouldn't judge too early. You have to give it some time, and you have to you have to develop a certain kind of sense of humor. It does. I'm serious.
Or strong skin.
It does help you to deal with it. Don't take everything so seriously and literally. People here say a lot of things. I say a lot of things. I'm being criticized by Germans who go according to the rules and everything. And you said, and you thought, and we thought because you said. But I didn't mean it this way. I got very much used to the Israeli life. I've been here for 24 years. And, suddenly you pick up things like, not that you're becoming entirely Israeli, you're not, but you pick up things and you don't think about other people anymore. Like when you talk to Americans who are new here or who live in the United States, suddenly they don't understand you anymore. But my point is, I think you should create just for yourself a certain kind of humor. Don't take everything. You know what? When someone is yelling at you, so someone is yelling at you. Maybe he has a bad day. Maybe he's stupid. Whatever reason. But don't take it personally. Don't take everything so
too hard.
Yeah. And don't get upset.
I think you have to make up your mind when you come here that everything is going to be different. And you have a choice. You can either embrace the difference and join in as part of society, or go back home. If you like Israel, you either love it or hate it. If you love it, all of the hard times, the lack of money, the leaky roofs. I lived in my first apartment. The window was held into the wall with duct tape. And the roof, every time it rained, I had to build a plastic tent over my bed, let it drain in the water.
Hole in the wall.
The hole in the wall. I mean, this was normal, and I was paying a fair rent. But for living inside Jerusalem, for instance, that is not unusual. Even a newer apartment will have leaks because everything is substandard. It's not like they have building requirements and there's no there's no heating in most places. There's no insulation anywhere because people don't use insulation. So there's all these different things. You have to make up your mind that you're walking into a different world, and you can embrace the world and learn to love it and the people in it, or you end up going back.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of people gave up too early. They compared, oh, I had my life in the United States and it was like this and that. And now I'm here and I'm miserable.
It's never going to be like that.
So,
the other thing you have to do, I would suggest, you have to get away from people who made Aliyah from the same place you did. English speakers tend to congregate together, German speakers together, French speakers. If you don't break out of that mold and get to know some Israelis and blend in, even if you only learn how to go and shop in the open air markets and talk to the vendors, that's a beginning. But if you don't blend in and only go places where people speak the language you're used to and act where you're used to, you're not going to make it, because you'll never be a real part of society. You'll always be an outcast.
You will be in your own bubble.
Yeah.
It's like you're in your own ghetto, like many Russians, many Germans, also many Americans or many English speakers in general. And, I know people here, let's take an example. One guy from Brazil, he made Aliyah, I don't know, probably 15, 20 years ago. And when I see him, all the time when I see him, he worked here as a security guard now at a supermarket. And all the time when I see him, he says hi, and then he starts complaining how miserable his life is. And he is like, oh, I want to go back to Brazil. And if I were back in Brazil and I would have a good life and I wouldn't have to deal with this stupid mentality and everything and the stupid people. And he's so upset and he's making his own life miserable. So you know what? Buy a ticket and go back. If you don't like it, go back. But don't bother other people and he's been telling the same for, I don't know, at least for 12 years. And he's still in this mood.
Yeah.
It's, just save up some money for a ticket and go back.
All I would say is come prepared for your trip. Be prepared to support yourself until you can find the proper job. Try and arrange for housing in advance if you can. If not, come on a earlier trip to plan how you're going to live, and have some savings. The worst thing you can do is to come here and expect that things are going to be provided for you, because that's going to be your first surprise. They won't. You may have a couple of good days at the beginning, but when reality hits, you're going to be sorry. So prepare, know what you're coming to, embrace the country, be prepared to love it, and you will.
Yeah. I mean, it has many, many advantages to make Aliyah. It's not that we are telling you the worst, to keep you away or something. It has many advantages. Israeli society is also very helpful. I mean, people, you will find very helpful people, not everybody, but you will find a lot of people helping you when you are in distress. I'm not talking about giving you money. I'm talking about giving you support or helping you, like not financial support, but emotional support.
Presence. I'll give you an example. Getting on the bus with a broken arm, people would shove me aside to grab a seat. On the other hand, I fell by the tram, and people will rush. They'll pick you up. They'll take you where you need to go. They'll bring you water, and they won't leave you until they're sure you're okay. And that's how they are. In 1 minute, they can push you aside, but in the next minute, they'll pick you up and take you home.
Yeah.
But you can't go around expecting everybody to take you home and look after you, because that's not going to happen. It's a great country to live in, and if you stay here, you'll change. Even when I go back to visit family, I'm not the same person, and it's very difficult to go back, because you realize that you've left one environment for another environment. But unless you're able to embrace the Israeli environment, you're not going to be happy here.
Yeah, that's true. But it's coming back to speaking Hebrew, if you only, let's say you only speak English and you have to go for an ulpan, like a language course, and learn Hebrew and everything, you are able to make it in English. Many people in Israel speak English, not always the best English. They won't always understand you. But people try to help, and maybe you should ask in advance, do you speak English or something?
You sure can get by, but you need to know a few words of Hebrew.
Yeah.
You have to know a little bit of basics. And if you don't know anything at all, you're going to have a lot of trouble. If you know enough, you know your numbers, you know how to ask for directions, you know, very simple things like that. You may not carry a conversation, but you have to know a few things. And if you don't know any Hebrew, if you know a few words, people will fall over themselves to help you. But if you just speak in your own language and don't know anything, most people don't even want to bother because they know that you're not making an effort, so why should they?
Yeah. And it's, people even tell you, you know, you come here on Aliyah, you get all your money and you get your ulpan.
Yeah, 6 months.
And you haven't even succeeded in returning something to the state of Israel by learning Hebrew. You know,
at least learning how to say good morning.
If you don't know anything, you know, the problem is you're getting ripped off here. People rip you off all over the place. This is a big thing here in Israel. Even Israelis rip off Israelis. No one is, you know, everybody can get ripped off. But if you don't speak the language and if you don't know the mentality, you are getting ripped off big time.
Prices double.
And yeah, suddenly everything is, you know, in Hebrew, the vendor says, let's say 10 shekels, let's say $3, and you come and you say in English, how much is it? And he's going to tell you $10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they never do it in dollars. And
no, in shekels.
Don't ask them how much in dollars.
No, oh my God, they're going to tell you $50. No, this is what they. So in order to deal with you know, you can blend in very fast when you learn Hebrew as fast as you can. But you have to, it's an obligation. It's almost an obligation here. When you go somewhere to certain ministries or to the tax authorities, you have to speak Hebrew.
And all the forms are in Hebrew.
All the forms are in Hebrew. Be prepared. If you don't speak Hebrew and you go, I don't know, to a municipality or tax authorities or something, take someone with you who can fill in the forms. Otherwise, it doesn't work. People won't bother with this. They give you they hand you the form and here, fill in and return it. And if you can't read and write, so
it's your problem.
This is your problem. People don't deal with this. People have this mentality, as I said before, you know, you're coming here, you're getting your Aliyah money, so do something. People expect you to do something in return, to do something to the state of Israel. Not only receive, but you also give. And you also give by learning the language.
Yeah.
You know, if I could not imagine not speaking Hebrew, I would be like in my own, like, you know, I keep my mindset. I'm miserable because I can't understand people. People say something to me and I think maybe they talk about me or speak something bad or whatever, you know. And I also, you know, the thing is, how can I say it?
You're on the outside. If you don't speak Hebrew,
you're not part of society.
Yeah.
Let's call it this way. You're not part of society. So you should definitely know Hebrew, not only the basics, but also a little more. Otherwise, you miss out too much. And you are only in your little bubble. And you may live here. The Baal Shem Tov once had a saying that, you know, your body can be somewhere, so to speak, your body is here, but your mind is still in America. And it's always, you know, your mind also has to arrive in Israel, not only your body. So in order to get your mind arrived, so to speak, so, you know, you have to blend into society. You have to learn the language. You have to have Israeli friends. You have to communicate. You have to know what's going on. And it's also good when you know what's going on. So you know where to go, what to do, how to talk to people, you know the laws, and yeah, everything, all the details. All the details you would miss out otherwise.
The other thing we should add is Israel is open for everybody to visit, but to have citizenship and make Aliyah, you have to be Jewish.
Yeah.
And that's it. If you're not Jewish, come for vacation, but don't think that they're going to let you stay here.
Yeah, that's a very important point.
Yeah. And if you want to live in a Jewish country, run by Jews, for Jews, it's a place where you should be because there's no other Jewish country in the world. This is it. So think about coming. Jews are needed here, but don't make your Aliyah a disaster. Plan ahead of time and plan correctly, and you'll love it here and you'll never want to leave, not even for a vacation.
Yeah. And don't give up when it seems like hopeless. You don't get along. Everything is so far from what you had expected. So don't just give up and, continue and try to see the positive side of life in Israel. So if you have any questions, if you have any remarks, or whatever regarding Aliyah or fitting into Israeli society, so let us know, write a comment or go to my blog. It's I mentioned my blog underneath the video, and or send an email or whatever. So let us know if you have any further questions. So do you have anything else?
That's it for me. Okay. Have a good day.
Have a good day then. And we will hear from each other soon, hopefully.